When it comes to pests, we are likely to encounter them more individuals or for longer durations of the year. And so we expect more insect stings and bees, which again is bad for my family specifically. Lyme disease is likely to be on the rise here in northwestern Ohio, and I'll dig into that in a moment. The other thing is we tend to think of these tropical diseases, and it's not something that we have to think about too much in Ohio, but you'll see over the next few slides that that might become increasingly more important even here. In terms of food, what we're going to have to watch out for is increased incidence of food poisoning, but also the amount of food that we're able to produce is likely to be altered. And then finally, allergens. So if you're an allergy sufferer like I am and my son is, you are likely to experience maybe longer seasons of symptoms. People who don't know that they are allergic to certain plants, for example, might encounter those near their homes in the future. So let's dig into pests and talk about what's happening there. So you've seen graphs like this today where we're seeing over a very long period of time this increase, this steady but very prominent increase in temperature. I've spent a large part of my career piecing together how organisms respond to this increase in temperature. So I'm going to walk you through what I've learned about how organisms respond to temperature and connect that to pests and ultimately human disease. The examples I'm going to present to you are based on insects because, first of all, they represent most of the animal species across Earth. Secondly, they're highly responsive to changes in temperature but also moisture. So if we watch how they're responding to climate change, it gives us some really good insights into how other organisms might respond as well. The most prominent body of evidence of changes in climate are what we see as shifts in phenology. So phenology is kind of a trade term that we use in ecology to refer to the timing of life events. So for a bug, when I talk about phenology, I might be talking about when eggs hatch in the spring or when organisms go into overwintering. For plants, we talk about bud break or leaf fall. What we're seeing is that because springs are arriving earlier and conditions are changing but also becoming more variable, the phenology of insects and other organisms is shifting. The timing of these life events in many cases might be happening earlier or extending over a longer period of time. The other widespread change that we're seeing via insects is shifts in their distribution. So what I mean by this is where they physically live. In this part of the world, what we're seeing is insects are moving north. They are now able to survive and reproduce and find food and do all the things they need to do in places that used to be too cold. So we're seeing this sort of poleward or northward march of organisms. Abundance is changing too, and we've seen this happen on both ends of the spectrum. Some organisms are reaching outbreaking proportions. In fact, we've seen this a lot with insect pests in recent years. On the other end of the spectrum, and unfortunately for pollinators, which I'll talk about a little bit later, we're seeing extinctions of local populations. In fact, we've studied this pretty thoroughly in California, which has been linked to some of these drought years as well. Lastly, we're seeing changes in the physiology of organisms. So essentially what their internal workings are and what they're doing. So for an insect, this impacts everything from how many eggs an individual might lay, how well they're able to survive and reproduce in a particular area.